Israel rocked with protests as it ends ultra-Orthodox exemption from the IDF. Israel is facing significant domestic crisis as protests and riots erupted following a landmark Supreme Court decision to end the long-standing military service exemption for ultra-Orthodox Jewish men. This ruling, which also prohibits government funding from religious schools, aka yeshivas, whose students don't participate in the draft, so they'll actually pull funding away from these yeshivas, has ignited fierce opposition from the ultra Orthodox community. The situation has escalated into violent demonstrations, with protesters attacking police and even a cabinet minister's car. This controversy threatens to destabilize Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's governing coalition, as ultra Orthodox parties play a crucial role in his government. The tension is further heightened by the ongoing war against Hamas in Gaza, where over 600 IDF soldiers have been killed. This development represents a significant shift in Israeli society, challenging deeply entrenched religious exemptions, and potentially reshaping the country's political landscape. Um, okay, so you give your initial reaction, and then I'll be right back.
All right, I want to know, how did Netanyahu, so people from Israel, please tell me, isn't how this is a huge threat to the coalition that Netanyahu has in place. Why? Again, I haven't followed the details of the timing here. From all the times that this would be done, I mean, I'm happy, I'm grateful that this is happening, and I will say why, because Kenny has a fair point here, which I will respond to. I mean, I disagree with him though. But why would this happen now? Given how loosely this coalition that Netanyahu has with these two other right-leaning parties, far-right parties, and how much they're threatening to leave this coalition and for Netanyahu's government to collapse, wouldn't this basically spark the, because this is a huge red line for them. This is a huge red line for those two other parties, and isn't this a threat to the stability? I mean, not that I'm not welcoming it. I'm just wondering why it's happening exactly at the time that is the most sensitive and the most dangerous to the coalition that Netanyahu has. So, do you have the answer to this? Why is Netanyahu doing this now? Let me see what the
He
Israelis say.
didn't do this now. This was a decision from the Supreme Court. Now, there have been
Oh, okay.
talks about bills to basically the Supreme Court ruled that they can't have this exemption. And there was talks about bills and so forth uh along this line for a very long time. And the ultra orthodox part of his coalition would basically threaten to pull everything apart because of this. No, so my understanding, and I do not know the ins and outs of the Israeli civic structure. Okay. But my understanding is that the Supreme Court made this ruling, and now the Knesset has to present a bill about how they would implement this along the lines of the ruling. So that's how we're going to really see how the cookie crumbles. And um I was watching some different analysis last night to try to answer this exact question you were asking. And some people think, oh, yeah, well, this is going to just rip everything apart. And then some people are saying, well, I don't know if it's going to completely rip everything apart, because at the end of the day, the ultra Orthodox parties know that they're probably not going to get a more favorable government than what they already have. So they might complain, people might be going crazy in the streets, but at the end of the day, they might not really be going anywhere. I don't know which is true. Either way, the implementation of this policy is going to be very, very interesting to see how it goes down, because when I was researching this news, I actually started researching about the groups within the IDF. There already are ultra orthodox groups within the IDF. and they have
Yeah,
their
but they
own
choose to be
units.
there.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
those are
yeah.
the ones who choose to be there. Yeah.
I know, but the point being is that they kind of need special accommodations. So they're going to
Right.
be all male units. They need the highest standards of kosher food. There I was reading interviews of mothers who are ultra orthodox and their sons are in the IDF, and they're complaining that, well, they do the best that they can to maintain their religious tenets, but they don't always have enough men to do the quorum needed to have certain prayers, and a bunch of the community is completely against it because they basically see this as a path to secularization of the community. And other people were talking about, oh, the ultra orthodox that have gone into the IDF, like a lot of them leave, like this is a huge problem. There was something else I learned is that when this war started, there was, I don't remember the exact number, I think it was 1,000 to 4,000 ultra orthodox men actually came forward and volunteered for the IDF, and all of them were rejected except for a few hundred, because I don't think the army has the capacity to accommodate all of them and their lifestyle at this point.
Wow.
So, my understanding is that the vast majority of the Israeli public approves of ending these exemptions, that it is an
Yes.
undue burden upon the rest of Israel. There's two issues, and I was watching a lot of Israeli commentators on podcasts and stuff talk about it, and they're like, this was kind of at first an issue of a moral principle of the rest of society having an undue burden towards a community that has lower job participation in higher what's the word I'm looking for? They take more from the state, they take more services from the state, but they have a disproportionately low labor participation. And so there's already so much that the state is doing to subsidize a community and a way of life that is not proportionally giving back to the rest of the country. But then this is for many Israelis like a step too far, when they're being separated from their children, where their children are risking their lives, their children are dying. And meanwhile, this other community is out on the street, saying that this country shouldn't even exist in the first place, but they're benefiting from the social services and they're benefiting from the subsidies, and they don't have to participate. They're like, this is just completely unfair. And um so there's a high degree of support for ending these exemptions, but then many people that I was watching, again, that's not representative of everyone, of everyone, but we're like, okay, I completely agree that we have to end the exemptions, but at the same time, they have an understanding that they don't have the accommodations necessary to like integrate them into the military. So it's going to be really interesting to see how these things actually pan out, because like I said, the bill actually needs to be presented in what that looks like. I don't know. What's interesting is that it's ultra orthodox men who are part of this exemption, not women. And the women can do other things like national service, I believe.
Look at this. Look at this. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Look. Wow. So they're so angry that they have to actually do something.
And there are lots of interviews with people in the ultra orthodox community that agree, or they're like, we're not going to do this. We would rather die than do this, because a lot of their
Yeah,
argument
but
is
they
that,
rather, it's not just this. They're against doing anything. Like it's not, they're not. I just want to make this clear. I've been to Tel Aviv. I've met these people. Okay, it's not that they're against going to war. They're against work in general. They just want to sit at their home or at their religious centers and just read the Torah and the Talmud. That's all they want to do. They would be as angry if you ask them to do anything else.
because
Guess how but they yeah, go on. Yeah.
a lot of them, what was the wait, I just lost my train of thought. Crap.
Yes,
Yeah,
Amir
they
is
were like,
saying
oh yeah, we oh no, no, I remember my point. They're saying, "Oh, okay, we might be home, but we're engaging in constant prayers, and our constant prayers are
Oh,
our
thank you so
battle.
much.
Our constant prayers
Wow.
are our battlefield, and it is our prayers that is actually protecting Israel. So we
Oh,
shouldn't need to go out and conscript."
thank you so much. You know what? I don't think Israel would have a chance against Hamas if we weren't home just praying so hard. I mean, what is the real weapon? What is actually protecting Israelis? Is it the Iron Dome or is it the prayers? I think it's the prayers. I would think it's the prayers. I mean,
Yeah.
you ungrateful Israelis complaining about these people calling them freeloaders and stuff. Everything you have, all the protection that Yahweh is, the reason why Yahweh is protecting Israel is because these people are part of it. You should be grateful. You should be like, these people are protecting you more than your army. You have no idea. You're just being ungrateful. By the way, they're so hated. I don't know if my experience, I'm not saying my experience represents it's not a scientifically collected data. But when I went to Israel, I mean, to be fair, most of the people I talked to in Israel were like secular atheist activists, but they hate these people. Like they hate these people so much. I mean, some of the, I mean, if you go talk to atheist activists in Israel, they're more obsessed about talking about these guys than Islamists. Because they think that, I mean, to be fair to them, Israel becomes weaker against her enemies because of these people. Like, even if you think that the main threat is like Islamic terrorism, yeah, but to stand strong against Islamic terrorism, you need a strong country, and these people make your country weak. I mean, some people say, is it a coincidence that October 7th happened at a time when the most religious, far right, ultra Orthodox government in Israel was in power? We were the most weakest,
Yeah.
when that happened. Yeah. So, and I want to respond to some of the comments before we go to the super chats. Amichai is saying it's not the right leaning party that is the problem, it's the religious parties that are right. I didn't say right. I'm not anti-right. Okay, when I say far right, I actually mean far right. And don't call anybody who is uh, just a little bit right leaning far right. I'm talking about these religious parties are far right. Okay, again, I am not against right-leaning parties, but by far right, I don't mean people who are anti-Islam. Anti-Islam does not make you far right; makes you just correct, makes you right. And being anti-immigration, Islamic immigration, doesn't make you far right. When I say far right, I'm talking about people with fascistic tendencies, with racist views, okay, with extremely religious ideologies. And these two other parties, Ben Gvir and Smotrich, they are religious. I mean, you act like religious and far right are separate from each other. Religious and far right are complementary. They're completely in line with each other. Again, and I didn't say right; I said far right. There's nothing wrong with being right leaning, right? And Muhammad saying, how does Israeli secular people feel about these people? Well, based on my experience in Israel, as I mentioned, they hate them. They hate them with passion. And also, I want to respond to this. Kenny was saying pulling funding is good from these religious organizations. Forcing a draft is not. Well, I mean, it depends. First of all, the people are not commenting on whether or not these forcing people to draft is right or wrong. But if there is forcing of drafted, these people should be included. Like, if you have the draft, then these people should be included. Whether or not we should have the draft at all or not is a separate discussion. But I would argue for a country like Israel, it's okay, you need to draft people. Like Israel, a country that its very existence is threatened to as much as Israel is. It makes complete sense for them to have forcing of a draft of people. I think it makes sense for Israel. If it makes sense for a single country, I might agree that it doesn't, like other countries having forcing drafting. I would like, yeah, why would you do that? Just have a powerful military. But with Israel being such a tiny country surrounded by enemies, I think for if it makes sense for one country, it would be Israel. Anyway,
Do they really have the luxury of a choice is the question.
no,
I don't know if they
yes,
do. And part of
yes.
the motivation behind this is that with the current war, they have been constantly redeploying reservists. It's like we can't be constantly
Mm.
depending on reservists. We need soldiers.
Yes.
I
And
think to
yeah,
be like
people,
it's a luxury that they don't have.
yeah, it's a luxury that people in other countries don't understand that they have, because they talk about rights and freedoms, and they forget the most important right. Like people in other countries, that they when their very existence is not threatened, they talk about all these other rights without remembering that the whole point of these rights is survival, right? All these other rights that you are defending, the whole point is survival. Your right to life, it comes before every other right that you're fighting for. Because what's the point if you can't even survive? What's the point of having rights if you're not even alive to enjoy them? Anyways, we have
No.
some super chats. Are they relative? Are they relevant to the news? Because if they're not, I'm going to put the news down.
Um yeah, some of
No,
them are
so
pretty
I'm going to
funny.
put the.
Drew gave a super chat saying atheist republic title is like Germany wants citizenship, recognize Israel, but the content is like the nipple is halal, baby. We can see it and touch
Well, the title is the first news that we covered, so we did cover that. Yeah. I mean, what do
um
you want us to do, Drew? Do you want us to include all the 5 news items in our title? Because we cannot do that. Yes.
it's not going to work very well with the algorithm. Which is a good reminder to
No,
like the stream.
like
Okay,
the
feed the
stream.
algorithm gods.
Yes.
Um, GJ gave super chat saying, "I feel that all Qurans and Hadith bundles should come with a warning on the covers that say these incite bigotry, hatred, violence, wars, and worse." Well, who's going to enforce that? What Islamic publishing company is going
I,
to do such a thing like that? Come on now.
this might be. We already have precedent for that, because we do that for movies and other books which are not kid friendly. So we already have a standard. I think we should. I completely agree with this. In liberal countries, I think the Quran and Hadith, it should make it mandatory for them to come with a warning. And if anybody says, "Well, this is a violation of free speech," given that we already have set that standard for video games and movies and other books, to be a warning to like children, because I think that why should that be an exception for Quran? I think we need to make that a law. Like we need to push for that. Yeah, but also the Bible.
Did Dave give a super chat saying they have big families? They are like Mormons. The secular Israeli population is declining, and the ultra Orthodox will dominate the future Israel. And that's another motivation behind this draft issue.
Do you know who makes the most amazing, gorgeous, and other adjectives that I can't use here on YouTube, blasphemous art ever? We do! And for some reason, we are giving it away for free. Download them now using the link in the description before we change our mind.